It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Bonobos. Bonobos is a menswear company that wants to help every man find his fit. That means embracing who you are and finding your own style. This fall, Bonobos is celebrating men across the country who found their fit in their own way. Visit bonobos.com, that's BONOBOS.com, to read their stories. Then start finding the clothes that will help you look and feel like your best self. With more fits, more sizes, more colors, and more styles. However you fit, Bonobos fits you.
This is the Locked On Auburn podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast presented by Fetch Me Home Delivery. Use promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free at FetchMeDelivery.com or the free Fetch Me app. Just a heads up, we're recording this on a Monday, even though this will be airing on a Tuesday. So Auburn basketball plays tonight. We had an awesome breakdown. I think it was an awesome breakdown yesterday on yesterday's show of the Auburn basketball performance Friday against Davidson, and they will have a big one against USA this evening. Zach Blackerby, Michael Pappas, Painter Sharpless. Painter, how are you, sir?
Good. Excited about what is happening in college football. It's this time of the year. It just never goes the way we think it will.
Yes, the chaos. The chaos is expected. You just don't know where it's going to come from. That's a lot of fun. Michael, hello, sir.
Hello, Zach. I feel like we just did this.
We just did this. How about that? All right, so big news happening over the weekend. Auburn lands a JUCO offensive lineman, Brendan Coffey. I love coffee, but it is spelled differently. But hopefully he will give the offensive line a jolt that it needs, like your morning cup of joe. You like that?
Wow.
You like that? 3-star JUCO tackle. Is it Butte College in California? Butte. I don't know if it's
Butte.
Butte.
I know it's.
I bet it is Butte College.
I know it's Crested Butte, spelled like that.
All right. 6 foot 6.5 inches, 275 pounds. The number 2 JUCO tackle, number 22 overall JUCO player, and he'll have 3 years to play too. So now Auburn has 7 offensive linemen committed. But Javion Cohen of Phoenix City, he attended the Alabama-LSU game. He's kind of been talking to other schools, so that's interesting. And then Jonathan Buskey may not arrive until next summer due to academics, so it's not expected for him to make an impact with all of these Auburn offensive linemen, the starters, departing at the end of this season. But Coffey isn't expected to graduate until spring, so that's why some programs kind of backed off of his recruitment. Auburn said, hey, that's okay, and so now he is committed. And AU Nerd on Twitter at AU Sports Nerd, he's a great follow. He tweeted, Auburn now has commits from the number 1, number 2, and number 7 JUCO offensive tackle. So that's kind of a sign of, oh, all right, they're about to have a mass exodus at the offensive line after this season.
Yeah, absolutely, and credit to Auburn because they're not interested in, rebuilding the offensive line. They're interested in reloading the offensive line, and we've seen them have success with transfers before, especially transfer tackles.
Sure.
Looking at you, Jack Driscoll. And so hopefully, how happy do you think Jack Driscoll is that he transferred from UMass to Auburn?
I think he's happy.
UMass is, 1-8? They're like the worst team in the FBS.
Believe it or not, I don't keep up with UMass athletics.
Okay. And I'm definitely excited. I think Coffey's got an easy nickname built in there.
Right.
You already made a pun about it. So I definitely think that this is a group next year that could be better on the offensive line than we really think at this point in the season.
Let's call him Brendan Cup of Coffee.
Yeah. I wish that his first name was Joe. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Or Mocha. Frappuccino. No, too much. Painter, you drink like 3 cups of coffee a day. What are your thoughts on Mr. Coffee?
Which is actually low for you.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Is 3 low for you?
It's used to be. I've leveled out. I was definitely drinking too much coffee a few months ago for a while. This is going to be the most fascinating part of Gus Malzahn, I think, over the next year or so.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to be fired. I don't think he's going to leave. The Arkansas job, I think, is one to watch more so than maybe Auburn fans might consider, and we can talk about that later. But the defensive line, I'm just not worried with Rodney Gardner at that position group, the defense in general, since Kevin Steele and those coaches have been there.
They just recruited so well on that side of the ball. We just haven't seen those guys yet, but that's okay.
Well, even the defensive line, they rotate so many guys in. It's not like they're bringing in 4 new guys that have never played.
That's true.
And so I think, you're going to lose a top 10 draft pick, and Marlin probably doesn't get into the first round, but as a second-day guy at this
I think
point,
he's a top 50 pick.
Yeah, and, maybe things change. Maybe he tests well, and he does work his way into the first round. But I don't think the group will be as elite next year, but, still think it's going to be really good, and you're going to get a decent bit back in your secondary, although you'll certainly lose some experience, and you'll have your linebacker core come back. So the defense, I think, is going to be in a good place. Your quarterback comes back. Your skill position group looks even stronger with the emergence of DJ Williams.
Yeah.
I think Stove and Hastings add something, but it's anyway, the point being,
Auburn has not made them a priority this year.
Yeah, and so the only question mark I really see that's just glaring, not to say that there won't be some other question marks at the units, is this offensive line. And that's been really the tale of Gus Malzahn on this offense over the last 3 or so seasons, both on the recruiting trail and in their key losses.
Sure. And, just talking about reloading the defensive line, I don't think it's a given that Nick Coe leaves after this year.
I
don't think he can.
Yeah, I don't think he can either.
Well, and it's so interesting, too, because when you've got coaches saying he's got a standard to meet and we need to see it in practice, if you were an NFL scout or a coach, that doesn't scream professional yet.
Right.
And it's not to say that you can't be there. I think, we forget because these guys look the way that they do, that some of them are 19, 20, 21-year-old. If you remember your 20-year-old self, you may not have been as mature as you ought to have been.
Sure.
But that comes with time. So I am fascinated to see what Coe does because the upside and the athleticism is there. This is a fascinating position group. And like Michael said, they're obviously going for the fix now. They have to because I think they understand the situation.
Well, they recorded so poorly at offensive line that they've got to get JUCO guys. But, just stick on the defensive front. If Coe comes back, I think T.D. Moultrie is going to stick around. I think Big Cat Bryan is there. Tyron Truesdale will still be there. And a guy like Connis Miller could step up. I think that's a pretty solid base to build upon.
You should be confident in this defense.
I think it's going to be fine.
That's I think, one of the more interesting things about the Auburn fan base is that they, put themselves in the tier with some of these, schools like Alabama and Georgia, but they do not have the same confidence of a fan base. And I think some of that's the coaching staff. I think some of that is just looking at the record and realizing that the team doesn't finish with double-digit wins every year. And so, I think that you can be really confident that your defense will be a top 15, top 20 defense again next year.
And Keith Niebuhr of Auburn 247 put out a great write-up on Brendan Coffee. So just check that out at auburnundercover.com.
Finding the right pros for home projects can be tough and spark a lot of questions, like, how do I find a pro who can help? Will they do a good job? Will I get a fair price? Well, that's where HomeAdvisor can help. From leaky faucets to major remodels, HomeAdvisor connects you to the right pro for the job in seconds and even helps you get a fair price. Read reviews, check project cost guides, and book appointments. Go to HomeAdvisor.com or download the free HomeAdvisor app to start your next project.
We're Unibet Sportsbook, and we're now in New Jersey, partly for the pizza, but mostly because we hear New Jersey sports fans are as crazy about odds as we are. Quality intel, quality odds. Unibet Sportsbook, crazy about the odds. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, so looking at the redshirt situation. Now we're at the final 4 games of the season when you count the bowl game. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of interesting to look at the redshirt counter. There's 16 guys, and I kind of want to get y'all's thoughts on each individual player. So we'll just go in order here that I have. It's in alphabetical order by last name. So freshman offensive lineman Kamar Bell, he has played in 0 games. I think it's clear that he will definitely redshirt, but your thoughts on if he gets any playing time this year?
Possible.
Maybe the bowl game.
Yeah, I think it's clear that they want to redshirt him. He hasn't played yet.
Freshman linebacker O.C. Brothers, he's played in 1 game. Y'all's thoughts?
It seems good to redshirt him because, what they probably want him to do, there's already guys doing it. So yeah. I think he's a guy that. Yeah,
definitely going to redshirt. We'll see how he plays over the last few games here. Freshman linebacker Cameron Brown, he has not appeared in a game this season. A redshirt is clear for him. Do you think he will get any reps over the last few games here?
No, same thing as Brothers. I think there's just people in front of him. How they why would you don't need him yet?
Samford maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. Freshman tight end Luke Deal, he has appeared in 2 contests so far this year. This is kind of the first one that is maybe a fringe, but I think he gets the red shirt, but I would not be shocked if he played in 4 games, that line as a red shirt candidate.
My thing is, if you're going to use him, really make him a threat. Like, I don't mind if you put him out there and he only plays 4 or 5 games this season, but make sure that it's really, you really include him in the game plan. I think is my only thing. If you're on the border the way he is and you don't really intend to make him a part of your scheme, I don't think it's worth it.
Tyler Fromm, the other freshman tight end, he has not appeared in a game this year.
Pretty
I don't think he's going to, so that one's a clear one. Let's see. Freshman defensive lineman Jaron Handy. He's played in 4. So if he steps on the field again, he burns his red shirt. This is a guy, we talk about reloading the defensive line for next year. I thought Jaron Handy was going to be a bigger presence on the defensive front in that rotation this year. So I think he plays more than 4 games. I don't think he gets redshirted. I would like to see him in every game moving forward.
I think there's a chance you'll see him in moments in the Georgia and Alabama game.
Yeah, and then of course Samford as well, as that's a big deal. Let's see. Wide receiver Javarius Johnson has not appeared in a game this year. I would not have guessed that going into the season, but a clear red shirt. Maybe a bowl game guy. Maybe he's a guy that gets reps in the bowl game.
I'd like to see him in both the Samford game and the bowl game. There's certainly no downside to him playing in the bowl game. And if he's got a skill set, why not throw him, if you just throw him in for a certain play.
I don't think so.
But I don't think that
there are so many wide receivers. Just with guys like Shedrick Jackson and Matthew Hill that we've wanted to see take a step forward. I think those are the guys that are going to be getting the snaps in Samford and in the bowl game.
It doesn't seem like he's going to get used, but I'd really like to see him in the Samford game in the bowl game. This was a guy that got a lot of excitement. He in high school, he
committed early.
Yeah,
committed early before he kind of blew up on the scene, and then other schools kind of went after him, and he's like, "No, sorry, I'm committed. I'm sticking with the guys who picked me early."
And I'm obviously partial just because of our relationship to Ryan, but that was that guy. We kind of had a conversation about this around the beginning of the year about what he did and the consistency. He was not elite. He was not an elite football player, but the consistency he brought at that position was really valuable. And I think you see Johnson, you think, oh, okay, they might have something similar in that.
Keandre Jones, the freshman offensive lineman, he has appeared in 0 games so far this year, so a red shirt seems clear for him. Junior defensive back Travion Leonard has not played in a game this year. It's kind of interesting seeing an upperclassman get that red shirt, but it looks like he's going to. Let's see. Freshman offensive lineman Justin Osborne has not appeared in a game this year, and that's all the offensive line we're going to talk about. But there's several so far that we've talked about. That all right, there's guys on campus. These are going to be the guys that are competing for those 4 of the remaining 5 jobs.
Notes can run out, but one thing that should never run out: guaranteed lifetime income in retirement. So even though every solo runs out, your monthly income in retirement should play on. Learn more at TIAA.org/neverrunout.
Annuity contracts and certificates are issued by Teachers Insurance and Annuity Association of America, New York, New York. Any guarantees under annuities issued by TIAA are subject to TIAA's claims payability. TIAA Traditional is a guaranteed insurance contract and not an investment for federal securities law purposes.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. I've been a freelance graphic designer for about 4 years now. And when you become a freelancer, you learn very quickly that you have to represent your work online. There's no better way to show potential clients what you can do than through your own website, which is why I use Squarespace. They make it really easy to create a beautiful online portfolio with their customizable templates and settings. My website lets people contact me directly, which gives me peace of mind knowing that no one's questions or proposals are slipping through the cracks. Plus, Squarespace sites look great on every device, which is helpful if I want to pull up my work on my phone for a potential new client. Check it out at squarespace.com/freelance for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the offer code FREELANCE to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Again, that's squarespace.com/freelance and use offer code FREELANCE.
Looking at more guys, freshman defensive back Nehemiah Pritchett. He has appeared in 4 games. So
I'm really curious. I don't know what they'll do here, because you could look at it as, man, he could give you a little bit of extra depth at the end of a season when guys are getting tired and they like him. Or it's like, well, you're going to lose some experience in the secondary next year. So do you hang on to that and just say, you know what, we really like what we have from here?
What's the upside of playing him, you think?
The secondary has been so good. I think the only thing is just depth. But you have to feel, I think, really good about him going into the Georgia and Alabama games.
The interesting thing about, a lot of people talk about the bowl game and, kind of a measuring stick of how your season was, but a big part of getting to a bowl game is using that month to practice to get ready for the future.
I would argue it's the most important part. The bowl game
100%.
itself is meaningless unless you are.
Unless it's a big bowl.
Yeah, I think I don't want to discount like the New Year's Six bowls because that is an accomplishment. But if you're playing in the Outback Bowl, it's like, oh, that's nice. But for Auburn fans, that doesn't amount to much.
Right. And so talking about all these guys that are kind of on the fringe, like if you're preparing for the future, you want a guy like Pritchett possibly getting reps because I think you're going to kind of give them some looks to say, okay, this is what we're going to be dealing with next year. So my guess is he does not get redshirted. If I had to place money on it,
I think that's a good way to lean. I mean, it's like you could see him in the Georgia or Alabama game, perhaps, but then in particular, it seems like you could see him getting some reps for the future. He'll be important.
And here's another freshman defensive back, Zion Puckett. He has appeared in 3 games this year, and he's kind of in a similar situation.
Mm-hmm. You'd like to think that like they both wouldn't probably burn. They wouldn't burn both of them, would they? But I don't know. I think it's certainly case by case in how they view their futures, and some of that I don't think we can know.
Right. A guy that has probably garnered the most of any player as far as conversation on this list, freshman running back Mark Anthony Richards. He has not appeared in a game this season. I don't think he's going to. They already announced that he was going to redshirt, and obviously with not playing a game with 4 games left, he will be redshirted. But maybe the bowl game he plays. I don't think he can play earlier than that just because I don't think he's going to be ready based on every report that I've read and heard.
So I just went on and on about the offensive line and how it'll be important for a number of different reasons, and that's really your cause for concern, your most glaring spot to look at during this offseason. But perhaps the most upsided position for Auburn next year will be this one because Tank Bigsby comes in. DJ Williams has emerged. You have an experienced back in Bowie Whitlow, and Mark Anthony Richards, the coaches are really excited about. This is going to be, and Sean Shivers, this is going to be almost too crowded of a backfield.
Right.
You start wondering, is
one of those guys is going to transfer?
Yeah, it's like, is everyone going to be there midway through next season? Probably not.
I think Mark Anthony Richards could be the guy that kind of gets the short end of the stick here.
Well, getting injured, that's not.
It stinks.
Yeah, it's not on him, but you might just get left behind where everyone else is showcased. He could go somewhere else and have a really great career. But I could understand him leaving too. I think it's too early to really know, but that's going to be I
just don't see where his playing time comes from.
Yeah, I guess my thing though with the offensive line is that'll be a fascinating position group because of how important it'll be for Malzahn and the program's stability. Running back, the fans should be thrilled about how well they've recruited.
Jashawn Sheffield, freshman wide receiver, he has not appeared in a game. And Michael, this kind of goes back to what you were saying. I mean, there's so many young freshmen that folks want to see more of, but it's just hard to get on the field right now. So I think he will get redshirted as well.
The skill positions for Auburn right now are looking really good moving into the future. I mean, those are definitely positions that they've recruited really well.
Yeah.
And, those are guys that are going to grow with your true freshman quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Then defensive back, Jalen Simpson, another freshman DB. He's played in 3 games so far. So once again, these young defensive backs, they're kind of the ones that you're looking at saying, okay, are they going to get a redshirt or not? And I think the reason these guys are getting into games is mainly because you want those defensive backs on the field for special teams. And so he's another guy to look at. I bet they hold him out until the bowl game and they give him some reps in the bowl game. And then our last guy, the Buck defensive end, Colby Wooden, the freshman. He has played in 2 games so far this year. I think they will get him up to 4 games, and I think they will redshirt him.
Yeah, it makes sense with what you're losing along, that position group. You want to have depth. I think that's good. They've gotten that rotation in.
Right.
This one to me seems pretty clear. I think redshirting him is the right move.
So, Michael, you and I alluded to the Alabama-LSU game a little bit on yesterday's show, but Painter, we kind of hinted at it real quick. Auburn taking on Georgia and taking on Alabama, that seems to be better and more, it seems to be more realistic than it did a few weeks ago.
So I was never I always felt like at this point, within the last few weeks anyway, as probably since the loss at LSU, that Auburn and Georgia were just not that far off. Georgia's defense will be the best Auburn's faced all year. I think even better than Florida's.
Okay.
and they don't have much of an offense. I mean, they have talent, like they're talent all over the place, but they have not been able to put it all together. And so if Auburn can get to 30 points in this game and in the Iron Bowl, I really like their chances. Maybe they don't win if they get to 30, but especially against Georgia,
I agree with you. My question is, can they get to 30?
Yeah,
that's my concern.
And I think that they can against Alabama's defense. Will that be enough? Will be an interesting point.
Yeah,
maybe because you saw that defensive performance Auburn had against LSU. They'll be at home with Georgia. It's like, yeah, can they get to 30? It has less to do with the defense in that game. I think they can hold Georgia to less than 30. It's like, can Auburn's offense get enough moving against that defense?
Yeah, and I'm not big on the whole transitive property that a lot of fans like to use, but I mean, it's kind of natural to look at what Alabama's defense was able to do against LSU and then compare it to what Auburn's defense was able to do on the road against LSU. But it's just every game is so different.
Matchups
every game plan,
are different,
yeah,
right.
100%.
Well, and Tua, I think he was fine, but he was clearly not 100%. And it limited his ability, not just to if he wanted to take off and run for a first down, but just move around. He likes to escape the pocket, extend plays, give those elite wide receivers time. And he couldn't do a lot of that. And they just played a pretty sloppy game. That's a team that's usually very disciplined. And the fumble at the beginning was pretty fluky, where it looks like they're going to drive it right down and score. And that's a weird momentum flip.
Right.
And they had
dropped it.
The having a 12th man on the field early when Joe Burrow throws an interception. And they never get, that team was, I thought, playing poor by their standards and was one touchdown away. And some people will say, well, yeah, that's sort of, LSU controlled a lot of that game, and so the touchdown at the end made it closer than it looked. I would argue that Alabama just didn't play very well and was still right there.
Yeah, they played terrible for a whole half, and then what they did in the second half was able to get them close.
Yeah, Zach, we texted about this during the game a little bit. Alabama did not look like a particularly well-coached team in the first half of that game, which is just shocking because, obviously Nick Saban's the best college football coach of all time. And it was really, really interesting. I definitely, like you guys said, feel better about Auburn's chances against Georgia and Alabama. For Georgia, it's pretty obvious that they just flat out don't trust Jake Fromm to throw the ball down the field.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough to win when you don't trust your junior quarterback to win you a game. And when they've gone up against teams that can stop the run, they've had real issues. They kicked 3 field goals against a Missouri team who didn't have their best player on defense. So,
yeah. I know a lot of folks are not impressed, especially with the Auburn fan base. I mean, the Auburn fan base has kind of pulled a 180. I mean, it looks like they're feeling pretty confident with everything, kind of moving forward. But fun show today, guys. Painter, where can people find you and hear you, man?
Please listen to The Lunch Break from 11 to 1. That's on ESPN 106.7 if you're in the Auburn-Opelika area. If not, we've got the podcast. And, of course, you can listen on the ESPN 106.7 app or at ESPNAU.com. And I'm on Twitter if you want to follow me. I'm at Paint Sharpless. Love you guys.
Michael?
I am on Twitter at CouchPaptato. I'm on the lunch break on Tuesdays usually. And so, yeah. Follow me, listen to me, be my friend.
Fantastic. I'm on Twitter at Z Blackerby. The show is on Twitter at Locked On Auburn. The show is also now on YouTube if you're into that sort of thing. So this has been another edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Locked On Podcast Network has the ultimate NBA podcast starting 5. Starting at podcast number 1 is your favorite team's daily podcast from a local expert. Starting at the podcast number 2 is Locked On NBA, your daily 30-minute look at what happened the night before and what's upcoming. At the number 3 spot is Locked On Fantasy Basketball, the number 1 fantasy basketball show in the land. And the podcast number 4 position is Rejecting the Screen with Noah Kozlov and Adam Stanko. And finally, the big men in the middle, the unequaled Hollinger and Duncan NBA show with former NBA executive and analytics godfather John Hollinger. It's Locked On Podcast Network's NBA podcast Ultimate Starting 5. Follow all 5 on your favorite podcast provider.